In this video, we're going to talk about growing bigger pecs. The pecs have three divisions, one lower, one middle, and one upper. Each of these divisions pulls the arm in a slightly different direction, and therefore we'll train each of them three different ways. So let's dive into some specific exercises that you can use, and then we'll talk programming. The first exercise we're going to go over today is the dumbbell bench press at varying angles, flat, incline, and high incline. Now, when we look at this flat bench setup, you'll notice that I have a slight arch in the spine. This is to line the lowermost fibers of the pecs up. We have to keep in mind that whatever fibers are going to most directly oppose the resistance are the ones that are going to be doing the most amount of work. Next, we have a slight incline bench, which will allow us to target more directly the middle or sternal fibers of the pec. Notice that with both of these variations so far, I'm not pressing toward my nose, I'm actually pressing somewhere above me, close to the sternum or in line with the fibers of the lower or costal pec. This will maximize the recruitment of the pectoral fibers, even though the range of motion is slightly smaller.
If I'm doing any sort of pec press, I don't want to aim above the sternum and toward the head, right? That would be great for delts, right? So it's not necessarily bad, it's just different. I'm going to want to aim to a position where I'm not coming up as high and where all those fibers are still under tension. So the second that I move up and away, you guys can see that like everything is going to want to be pulled up and out of tension in that kind of a position.
Lastly, we can raise the height of the bench just a little bit more to target the upper or clavicular fibers of the pecs, ensuring again that the range of motion is ending before I've gotten to about nose level. Now that we've covered some pretty basic dumbbell pressing and anatomy, let's move on to some more complex exercises that we can do with cables to isolate those muscles even more. This is a costal or lower pec cable press, and as you can see, the direction of the cable is directly lined up with all of those lower pec fibers. I'm pressing directly into that direction, and I'm keeping my arm tight to my body. This is a cable press variation for the sternal or middle pec, and as you can see, all the themes are very, very similar. The cable is directly opposing those middle fibers of the pec, and I'm pushing directly toward the middle of my sternum. Lastly, we have the cable press variation for the upper or clavicular fibers of the pec. All the themes again are the same. The cable directly opposes the line of pull of all those muscles, and I press directly in opposition to that pull of the cable. So now let's cover some common mistakes made with pec training in general and how you can address those. Mistake number one is letting the arms go too far away from the torso in the stretch position of any pec movement. The pecs attach and wrap around the rib cage, which means that whenever we're doing a pec-based movement, we want our arms to be tighter to the ribs. If the arms are not tight to the ribs, the pecs cannot maximally stretch around the rib cage. Another problem with wider grip pressing is that it also exposes the shoulder to greater potential risk for injury. Pecs are a huge muscle group that can contribute a lot to pressing and to wrapping the arm around the body, and when we disadvantage the pecs, we put tax on other smaller muscles that are not apt to handle those kinds of loads. Oftentimes, most of the pec tears that you'll see with heavy bench presses occur with a super wide grip at the bottom portion of the movement when the pec is supposed to be most advantaged but isn't. Mistake number two is only sticking to the barbell bench press. The barbell bench press can be a great movement for developing strength specific to that movement itself, but it's not a great exercise for hypertrophy because the range of motion is inherently limited by the constraints of the bar. The exercises I've previously showed, like the dumbbell bench and the cable press, are much better options because not only do they encompass more range of motion for the target tissue, but they also allow for more degrees of freedom that allow you to manipulate your arm path. Mistake number three is not training frequently enough. A lot of times people want to grow their pecs, but aren't willing to put in 2 to 3 days per week into the gym to target all of the different specific fibers. I would recommend starting out with 2 different days that you train pecs specifically, and make sure that you hit all 3 divisions on each of those days individually.